A call that has gotten louder and louder in recent times. In Kenya, the state of our boys and young men, some believe, has reached crisis levels in terms of education, life skills, and contributing to society. Now, the Institute of Economic Affairs found that despite more boys being born and even surviving to school-going age, more girls are being enrolled in school. According to another study, the population of female university students has grown by 74%, while that of male students has grown by a paltry 27%. A report released in July this year by the National Gender and Equality Commission found that in 8 counties in Kiambu, Kakamega, Kisumu, Embu, Garissa, Kericho, Mombasa, and Kilifi, the boy child is perceived to be lagging behind the girl child in the gender equality agenda. So, with all these stats, is the boy child really under siege? Before I put that question to my guests, we sought to find out the same from a few Kenyans. Watch.
Challenges ni kama unapata donapata ni kiasi, but unajua dem ana demand for haya, unacheki. So unapata ile design hiyo yangu kidogo haizi appreciate, unaona. So unapata kama mimi naumia, utapata juu siwezi mpata ile do anadai, itabidi atafuta msemo mwingine, na msemo mwingine akona do kushinda yangu, unacheki.
Right now girls are a bit more educated than boys, so and they are a bit competitive than before. So it is something that boys will have to deal with now and in the future.
There are so many organizations coming up, maybe supporting the girl child. But if you look currently, organizations supporting boy child, there are few number of them compared to organizations supporting the girl child.
A woman was a support staff to a man. So now the government came up with the modalities to empower the girl child so that she can also be equated to the man, because we are the same.
Inaanzia tu hata ukiwa mtoi, kawe ni dem at least vitu unapewa. Kawe ni boy yenyewe inabidi una struggle for everything, unacheki. Kama ni job, madem wako na favors, una get. Wewe kama ni boy lazima struggle tu, yani kila pahali.
Where there is a woman, there is a rise of a man. So if we don't consider these ladies, vile watu wanaanza kuwaua, unafikiri katika dunia kweli generations itakuwa?
All right, so let's try to answer that question. Is the boy child under siege? Joining me in studio now, Stephen Kangara, who is the Academic Affairs Manager at the Kenya Institute of Professional Studies, as well as Julie Masiga, who is a journalist at The Conversation Africa. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Let me begin with you, Stephen. You actually did your own survey at KIPS to see how male students were faring after they graduated.
Yes.
And what did you find?
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me say that if you look, all indicators, they are shouting that the boy child is under siege. From the point I sit, from where I sit, I did a personal study focusing on several areas on the boy child. I did the study to study with the academic. I did the study to look at the social circles. I did the study to look at the job market, and the study about the crime world. And all these indicate clearly the boy child is under siege. If we have to focus on academic side of it after graduation, and I thank you very much because of what you have shown here, it indicates the level of enrollment. It has gone up for girl child at the expense of boy child. Now, after graduation, my survey indicates clearly the rate of absorption in the job market for girl child is very high compared to the counterparts. I did a survey specifically. I sampled some of the courses that we offer at KIPS Technical College. I majored in business courses because that is where we have neutrality. I did not major in engineering or hospitality. If you look at engineering courses, they are more dominant by the girl child. But if you look at the business courses, there is a lot of neutrality in it. Take an example. If we have a group of students studying a course for banking and finance, take, for example, the sample that I used. After graduation, I took a sample of maybe 200 students. Out of these 200 students, take a relatively level whereby we have 70 are girls and 110 are boys. That is that course. But if you look at the rate at which they get infiltrated in the job market, you will find that there is a big variations. Girls are finding more opportunities in the job market. This one I can attribute it to several factors. One, back in 1990s or early 80s, that is when we started the campaign for Girl Child. This campaign for Girl Child opened up for more opportunities. The Girl Child was empowered. And now, the campaign was back then elevated or given a push by the constitutional provision on affirmative action. Affirmative action came into place because of, most of all, to address the progressive practice of the societies that had to affect the girl child.
Right.
But later, that one now has picked up, and most of the societies and organizations are campaigning and focusing on girl child. Now, that translates to the job market, because if you look, for example, the training itself, that now be part of the socialization circles. The training itself, even the trainers, they tend to favor, they are more tilted to the girl child. Let me give you an example. In the month of August, there was this music festival that was held in Nyeri. If you compare the number of girls who turned up for music festivals compared to boys, it is shocking. Girls were very high. And when you have this one now, you raise the self-esteem for this girl child, you have raised the confidence for this girl child, and now when they go to seek job market, they are more qualified, they have the skills. But boy child?
Okay, let me bring Julie in on that, because like they say, numbers don't lie, Julie.
Yeah.
But you also wrote an article a few months back in a local daily saying this is all perception in terms of the boy child being left behind. I mean, tell us more about why you feel that way.
I was reacting to the report that was released by the Gender Council, where they were doing a study because of the perception that the boy child is being left behind. And I found that interesting that out of a perception, now we have an entire report. But they, like you said, went to Kisumu, Kakamega, 8 counties, I think, and more than 90% of the people there said that the boy child is actually being left behind. But I would ask you this in terms of all the numbers that you've given us. Transition rates from education into the workplace. Right now in Kenya, for example, most of our leaders are male. We haven't even reached the 2/3 gender principle rule. Since 2010, when the whole thing was introduced, until now, nothing much has happened. If you go to places like the newsroom, I'm sure Victoria understand, there are more men than women in positions of power, positions of leadership. So what is happening between the boy child being left behind and suddenly the boy child appearing in these positions that on boards, in corporates, you know, this kind of thing, what's the disconnect? And also to say the boy child is under siege, what does that mean? It's not like an intent. It's not intentional to put the boy child under siege. It's just because all these interventions for the girl child since the late 80s and the 90s are coming to fruition now. All those interventions that were put in place, send your girl child to school, as basic as that. Don't marry your girl child off at age 12. Things as basic as that is why there were interventions for the girl child. So now we're seeing that women, like you say, we have more self-esteem, we're confident because people have been behind us. But no one was intentionally trying to keep the boy child behind. And let's not forget that the whole system is geared towards supporting the boy child anyway. This is why we needed interventions for the girl child. So I think that the parts of the system that supported men and boys all that time, what has happened to them? Why are they threatened by the empowerment of the woman? You know what I mean? So it's an interesting conversation. I think it's still very much a perception, despite your figures, that the boy child is under siege. The thing that has happened is that maybe the men are in crisis because women now are stronger.
Let me ask that, Stephen, do you feel that this is girl and women empowerment is a threat to a patriarchal society that has existed for decades, centuries actually, if you think about it?
Now, I want to depart from her argument, saying that it's all about perception. And I want to borrow one of your idea that you have said, the empowerment for the girl child is now bearing the fruits. Having said that now, the patriarchal societies, where we are coming from, and it is what triggered now the affirmative action, such that now the women have equal opportunities and gender equality. But again, when you talk about this gender equality, it's not at the expense of the boy child. I want to bring it to attention here, through the parliament. If you look, for example, the member of parliament that we have elected, the women, all of them in the parliament, they are campaigning to create more opportunities for these women. But if you look at the counterpart, for example, it is very shocking. For another day here, we had somebody, a member of parliament, is putting a motion to legalize baggy. What does that one mean? Why are you putting this boy child? But again, you find it this way. There has been this philosophical statement that women are the enemies for themselves. But now it is coming to the reverse. As men, we are becoming enemies for ourselves. Reason being, the mentorship for men is not there. The fathers, the issue of the absentee of the fathers, right, they are not there. So this patriarchal society is changing the shift. Men are not dominating anymore.
Should men dominate, though?
I think they should participate equally with women. I don't think either sex needs to dominate. And this is the whole essence of equality, feminism even, is for people to be on equal standing. But it's a good question you ask, where are the fathers of these boys? Or what are the mothers doing? Because mothers play a huge role in raising children, both male and female. I don't think anybody, I don't think you can rightly say women are their own worst enemy or men are their own worst enemy. It's just, it's the value system. Maybe you go back to the family. What's happening as we're raising these children? What are we telling them? And so that they grow up to we get to this point in time when you're doing like your vox pop and a man will actually say, girls are given everything and boys have to go out and work. And I find that very interesting because girls understand that they have to work maybe twice as hard. They have to really work hard to get where they are. They're not waiting to be given anything. They're actually putting in the hours and using their self-esteem, and everything that has grown has come with all this initiatives for the girl child. So,
I mean, if we're talking about this trend, if it continues, as you say, Stephen, these boys now grow into men. They are now going to be given the responsibility of becoming the fathers and leaders of the future, and they have not been socialized in the way that they should. What happens? Because people say, okay, our boys grow up, become men, and they can't be husbands to our daughters. Yeah. What is the implication if we don't correct this trend that you are saying?
That is where the problem is. That when it comes to the socialization circles, we are starting from the families. Go back to the churches. Go back to schools. The socialization circle is not able to incorporate the boy child fully. The boy child is left behind. And now what is the impact for this and the outcome for it? Now, the personal study that I did, it indicates clearly. For example, in high schools, and this is collected from the secondary data, in the high school, 400 students are taking drugs. Out of 400, 16,000 students are girls. If you look for the other side, or bigger percentage is left for the boy child. If you look, for example, the rate of crimes, this is very high for the boy child. Reason being, this boy child has been left out completely. We agree this mere fact. For example, in the family, back in the family, what is the role of the father? What is the role of the mother? And all of us, those who have the families, who have children, you'll find it clear here. Even when it comes to buying the present for the boy child, the girl child, there is a much different. You are tended to buy more expensive gift for the girl child compared to the boy child. In the mere fact, by the act of that, what are you doing? You are showing this boy child it is of low value.
Do you have stats to back that up?
I was just about to say that.
Let me show you.
Because that could be based on, just assumption that that's the case. Yeah.
It's not an assumption, actually. Now, the impact for this now, boy child feeling left out, is that he's going now to other cocoons where he's going to socialize them in a moral degradation manner, whereby they are going to gang ups, they are going to find their rescue, they are going to find their comfort in drugs world. And that is the trend that we are in.
So you're saying they're being pushed to crime, not on their own volition, but because they are being treated or being marginalized by, well, parents or anyone else who could be in authority. But let's quickly take a look at some of the feedback on social media before I come to you, Julie. Yeah. Jomo on Twitter saying, boy child is definitely playing a second fiddle from a societal perspective. What amazes me is how complacent we are to think the boy child having a thick skin and able to survive on their own. Far from it. Interesting perspective, Julie, because again, boys are socialized to not wear their emotions on their sleeve, oftentimes mask it. They have that macho man demeanor about them. Do you think that also makes it a bit harder for them? I mean, they're struggling, they're boys, they're going through their own issues, but they've not been taught on how to process it, say, like the girl child has. What impact and psychological impact does that have?
I think back to what you said about like going to a life of crime, trying to find an outlet for those emotions because you don't know what to do with them, how to express them in a natural kind of safe manner. That could be one of the, could be what's happening. But I'll just go back to say maybe the word to use is not that the boy child is under siege. Maybe the boy child feels threatened by the girl child because the girl child is almost on an even footing. And then, of course, girl children tend to have all these soft skills like you're talking about, how to express your emotions, how to ask for help, how to talk to your friends, and all these kind of things. So they have a way of dealing with life in a way that is healthier, I would imagine, that, as opposed to the boy child. So when all these things are coming at the boy child, the life is hard for everybody, but people tend to deal with it differently. So this is perhaps where we see alcoholism, addiction rising, and a life of crime, because an outlet for that energy that you cannot express, and this feeling that you're being put upon because the girl child is being encouraged to shine. So that could be, I'm not a psychologist. I
mean, and Stephen, from your standpoint, how do we deal? Because as much as you can say, yes, the boy child has been left behind, and you know, girls are moving forward and pushing forward, sometimes it takes on a victim mentality. How do we push away from that and really truly mentor our boys to have a healthy view when it comes to gender equality? It's not a competition with women. We are working together. How do we get to that place?
Now, let me say this. First of all, this discussion, I know it's going to open kind of worms, especially to the counterpart of the boy child. Now, if you look at the biblical perception, and if you refer to the Bible, there was this story, Raphael, that he ganged up to kill the boy child below 2 years. Now, if you look at it to our current situation now, if you kill the boy child, what have you killed? You have killed the generations. Now, how do we now deal with this perception that the boy child has been left behind? First of all, if you look, for example, the whole spectrum of mentorship, there's a whole group of many organizations that are campaigning for the girl child compared to the boy child. If I ask you, Victoria, how many organizations do you know are backing this boy child? They are very minimal. So the level of mentorship and where we need to come up properly and strong, it is of the mentorship. This boy child needs to be mentored. This boy child needed to be shown the way. This boy child needed to be lifted up. Not just a matter of rebuking this boy child, because what happens to men, if you rebuke a man, if, for example, you threaten a man, they tell it to quail. And because they have a lot of energy, what they do is they go to the other world of crimes. So generally what we need to deal with generally here, across the board, to all the stakeholders, from the government, to organization, to the media, we need to team up and come up strongly to mentor this boy child. Because if we let it go that way, by the mere fact of what we have shown here on the provision on the TV, that the rate at which the enrollment, for example, to the schools, the job market for girl child is high, then we are killing the generations. We are killing this boy child, and we shall lose the country.
All right,
and the nation at large.
And a challenge to individuals as well. We can't just wait for the organizations, institutions, and government, individual men to reach out to individual boys as well. I'll give you the last word, Julie, as we wrap up.
About, I don't know about the biblical reference. I don't think anyone is trying to kill the boy child, but I do think that if there is that perception and some men are feeling left behind, then of course interventions need to be created to reach out and to mentor, etc., etc. Because at the end of the day, we want a society where we're helping each other progress. One is not supposed to be behind the other. So we might be getting to a point where girls might move slightly ahead because of all the attention that's been given to them. And if that is indeed the case, then clearly every child, like the Constitution says and all the policy documents and the law says, needs to, their interests are paramount. So I would agree on that point that treat children equally because it's an economic and developmental issue.
All right. This conversation can't stop at this table. Thank you so much, Stephen and Julie. And of course, the whole goal of this is to ensure that we have a healthy view on gender equality between boys and girls. We're here to work together. We're on the same team.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for your feedback as well. Have a wonderful evening. And of course, see me again tomorrow with Jeff Koinange. Keep the conversation going on social media and of course on our SMS line 22422. We love to hear from you. Good night.